So while I'm introducing them to make their way to the stage while you're continuing to get your seats, I'd like to welcome to the stage moderator for our next panel, Bill Caruso, partner with Archer and Griner, Bob Garrett, CEO with Hackensack Meridian Health, Liat, Krawczyk, Executive Director, New Jersey AI Hub, Steve Sweeney, former Senate President and current Gloucester County Administrator, Dr. William Tate from Rutgers University, our new president of the Scarlet Knights, go Scarlet Knights, and Bruce Van Saun, CEO and Chairman at Citizens. Let's have a round of applause for our CEO panel. And folks, please bring your attention back up here now. These are some dynamic CEOs in our state. Let's show them the respect they deserve. Thank you very much. Bill, the stage is all yours.
Good morning, everyone. Exciting times. Michele, congrats. An unbelievable event, kicking off a brand new legislature, brand new governor's term, brand new year. Hope springs eternal, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to get into it here on not only some of the hopes, but also some of the challenges that we all face here in the New Jersey business climate. We're going to welcome this panel first and then offer some context. NJBIA's 67th Annual Business Outlook Survey suggested New Jersey businesses were tepid in 2025, Q3, Q4, as they look forward to 2026. Now, the top business challenge again to be the cost of doing business in New Jersey, followed by the cost of healthcare and taxes. This year, new item also bubbles on the top, energy costs, with 77% of respondents stating that they are either substantially or moderately impacted by increased energy costs in 2025. So I'm going to ask, as the panel introduces themselves to you, please share your reactions to this survey. Tell us what the number one priority issue is affecting your industry and your business. I think we will start with Dr. Tate, and we'll move down the line. Dr. Tate, please.
So I'm William Tate, president of Rutgers. Been there 7 months now. Prior to that, thank you. 4 years at LSU prior to that. It's great to be here in New Jersey. I concur with respect to the cost of business here. Obviously, it's a state institution. Healthcare costs, energy costs, salaries, fringes, and the like mount. The revenue side of a university is largely driven by net tuition. And so you're caught in this vice grip of the costs are going up, and everyone wants you to hold your costs down. The realities of the business I'm in, it's inelastic demand. The higher you're ranked, the more people want you. Very simple. I would say the number one issue in our industry, from my perspective, is the capacity to continue to fulfill the American dream, which is inexplicably linked to higher education. The American dream unfolded as a concept, but the reality is it was institutionalized in higher education and education broadly defined because knowledge, reason, and the like, that was the pre-revolutionary thinking. Our capacity to continue to be able to help people move up the economic ladder is our number one priority. It should be. It should never deviate from that. I would say a big second is R&D. R&D drives what happens in your municipalities, in the state, in the country, and the like. We can't get away from that. So that's my take. I won't dominate the conversation, but I will say this. Despite the critiques in higher education right now, you very rarely see at the state or local level compacts that combine the work of government and our higher education groups. People complain, but they never organize. That would be, I would say, a number one problem.
Don't boo, vote. Bob.
Yes, hi, I'm Bob Garrett, and I'm the CEO at Hackensack Meridian Health. You said you were there 7 months. I've been at Hackensack Meridian for 40 years. So it's been a great journey, but it's a pleasure being here today. And I agree with what the governor said just a few minutes ago. I think that the number one issue in the healthcare space is really affordability. There's a lot of reasons why that is and why the cost of medical care or healthcare has gone up significantly, particularly over these last few years. But I'm also an optimist by nature, and I think there are some really good solutions that I hope we'll be able to talk about during the course of the panel. You know, some of them will focus on really making sure the healthcare system addresses prevention as well as treatment. I mean, that's something that a lot of other countries have done very, very well, and they've kept their cost of healthcare, you know, significantly lower as a result of that. I think it's the way we provide healthcare is also changing. You probably have noticed it around the state. There's much more healthcare that's more accessible in people's neighborhoods and small towns and ambulatory care settings. That also keeps the cost of healthcare down, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, I hope, as well. But definitely, I think, you know, the surveys bear it out. We hear it all the time from healthcare consumers. It's about affordability.
Liat.
So thank you for having me. Liat Krawczyk, I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey AI Hub. Similarly to Dr. Tate, I've been in this role for 7 months, so it seems to be a theme here. So for those of you who aren't aware, the New Jersey AI Hub is one of 12 strategic innovation centers that are currently being set up across the state to really push forth our innovation economy. Each one of these centers is really started by founding partners that are across the public, private, and academic sectors. And in our case, we are founded by the state of New Jersey, Princeton University, Microsoft, and CoreWeave. And all of these entities have come together to, with the right kind of three-legged stool approach of public partners, private partners, and academia, all necessary ingredients to really see the innovation economy take off, coming together to ask the question, what are all of the investments we need to be making in the economy across the board to make sure that we are ready for the AI moment? And that's really our role here. And so, you know, in terms of, you know, there's the affordability question, and then you know, how do you really address affordability? I mean, in part, you grow the pie, right? You grow the pie so that when you slice the pie, there is less burden on individuals and businesses, and that's really the point of growing this innovation economy. So what we do essentially is think about what are the investments we need to make across the board in industry, in educational institutions, in workforce, in government, to think about the future of, you know, setting forth this new era and thinking long-term about what we need to bring to the state and how we capitalize on this moment to essentially, when you think about the industries that are really robust in New Jersey, such as the future of health and smart manufacturing, and you know, a lot of, you know, the financial kind of services, the power that AI has to change those industries for the better of humanity is huge, right? So we think about how do we bring that to the state? And similarly, how do we hedge against the risks, especially in the labor force market? So these are some of the things that we're thinking about in terms of addressing the economy today.
Steve.
I'm a former Senate president, former iron worker. No idea what I'm doing on this panel with all these people. Normally, I'm gathering the coats for everyone at this point in my career. But look, affordability has been the issue forever. And the problem with the state of New Jersey is they don't pay the bills they have. They create new programs and they come and tax you more. If you tax less, you grow more. You know, I was proud we had the lowest tax rate on sports betting. And guess what? We're #1 in the country. So there's a real correlation to taxing, less taxes, too much government. You know, I see Steve Warho here, he's my former colleague. We did things together to try to reduce cost. We got to get serious. We got to change the way we deliver government. We get too many schools. You know, we can go on and on. But most importantly, what I'm excited to be here about is talking about energy. Because energy is a huge issue to everyone, right? Huge issue. You know why? We don't have enough of it. We stopped generation, we exported. At one time, this state was an exporter of energy. Now we're an importer. Now, I did all the clean energy bills, just so you know. So if you hate wind, blame me. If you hate solar, blame me. I did all those things. And back in 2018, if we weren't successful, they were going to close all of our nuclear plants. Think of the situation we would be in today. So we have to work with this new administration, convincing them that we need more power generated in New Jersey. where we create the jobs in New Jersey. You want to boost your economy in New Jersey? Invest in infrastructure. I also think our pension system, they should create an infrastructure portion of our pension system. Bill, we got billions of dollars. Leverage that working with our partners, whether it be PSEG, South Jersey Industries. Leverage that pension, get a good return, but start making that money work for us. So, look, I am someone that's passionate about government. We need energy. It's not going to get better. If we wanted to start today to build a new gas plant, it'll take you 6 years. Every year, energy costs are going to go up 20%. Realize why they're going up is because we stopped generating energy in the state of New Jersey. So we've got to focus on how we reverse that. And by building energy, and like, I'd love to build a new plant. Hopefully we build several of them. But that takes time. So again, I'm here to talk about energy. Thank you.
Anybody wonder why he's on this panel? Thank you for being here, my friend. Bruce, last but not least.
Okay, thank you. Bruce Van Saun. I'm Chair and CEO of Citizens Bank. I've been that for 12 years. Thank you. That's better. Chair and CEO of Citizens, been that for 12 years. We've had a long presence in the state, particularly in the southern part of the state, 30 branches in the greater Philadelphia area. Yeah, big Phils, go Phils. But we did an acquisition 4 years ago, HSBC's East Coast branches, and then Investors Bank, which is how I got to meet Michele. But now we have 80 branches in the northern part of the state. So it's a really important market for us, and we have some great talent that we've brought into the state, and it's going very well. So that's a little bit about us. I agree with the overall observation that New Jersey's a tough state to do business in. You look at a number of factors there, the taxes we talked about, high regulation, high energy costs. And then, when I look at a situation, though, you also have to balance the negatives with the positives. And so what do we have on the positive side of the ledger? Highly educated workforce, turn out a lot of great graduates every year. We also have a great location geographically, up and down the East Corridor. You have to go through New Jersey. You're between New York and Philly, so that's a real asset to leverage. And then we just have a state that has so much natural beauty that also presents opportunities for us. So I would say on the overall picture, we got to chip away at the negatives and we have to accentuate the positives. The other question was about what's top of mind for us. So right now, banking is going through a lot of change. There's some great innovation and great technology, the AI, agentic AI. There's opportunities to completely reimagine how we do business, how we run the bank, how we serve customers. We've just launched something called Reimagine the Bank, which I'll talk about later. But making sure that we can embrace that technology change, bring our people along with that, that's top of mind for the banking industry.
Excellent. Bruce, we're going to stay with you. I like the positivity. We're going to talk about one negative point, though. New Jersey's got the highest unemployment rate in the nation, 5.4%. We've got threats of persistent inflation, still not going away. Give us some insight, though, on what you guys are seeing in the financial markets, maybe that we can cling to for some hope, from some optimism down the line. And what are you looking at, and what should we be looking at?
Yeah, so 2025 started out choppy. New administration, policy implementation was a bit rough. As we went through 25, things actually started to tick up, and we saw some decent levels of GDP growth. And our outlook for 26 is more of the same. So there's factors to look at. The one big beautiful bill is stimulative. Deregulation is very positive. Pro-energy push at the federal level is positive. The Fed cutting rates is positive. The level of AI investment that's taking place and the spend that goes along with that, all very positive. So we would say GDP growth, I would say at least 2.5% for 2026. I think unemployment is probably between 4.5 and 4 going down. Inflation is probably between 3 and 2.5 going down. So that's a pretty good backdrop in which to operate. In terms of things to watch out for, there's clearly still a weakness in consumer confidence, I would say. And that gets back to the inflation, gets back to affordability. And, the inflation raised prices faster than real wages were able to catch up. And so people lost purchasing power, particularly kind of at the bottom half of the income distribution. And it's going to take some time. Good growth will allow for those wage gains to catch up as we bring inflation down. I think we just have to be patient, but I think that consumer sentiment will turn around. It might take a couple of years for that to happen. The other watch out would just be a lot of geopolitical risk, and who knows what the wild cards are that are out there. But I'd say the kind of basic view is it's going to be a good year. Folks are going to invest. And we could be actually at the onset of a very positive business cycle. I think this could last more than 26. It could last into 27, 28.
From your lips to God's ears.
I hope.
Dr. Tate, we're going to talk about a different challenge, and it relates to affordability. Relates to affordability for folks that are looking to move up the ladder through education. One of the persistent challenges you face regularly in your industry is funding. New Jersey has not made the requisite investments in higher ed over the years, and have basically forced other options, which hit directly on affordability, on cost, tuition costs, fees, other things that families are forced to burden, or frankly, graduates are leaving with big loans. What's the state of the state right now, post-secondary institutions right now, financially, and what insight do you have to provide on that?
Well, I decided I was not going to be politically correct. So the realities are, if you look at the budget framework of most institutions of higher education, in New Jersey in particular, I ran an analysis for Louisiana and published it before I left. That's probably why I left. The realities were that if you don't have a brand in the marketplace, your institution is at risk, because we have two things happening at once: demographic decline, and also the quality factors in K-12 related to performance in math, science, and reading skills are sloping in a negative fashion. So there are fewer people overall, and then there are even less who might have the quality that you would expect at an institution of higher education. In part, we're overbuilt. We were in Louisiana. I won't comment on New Jersey. I'll be politically correct in that way. But we were overbuilt in Louisiana. We couldn't actually afford the number of institutions we had there. This was a real problem because at LSU, that was the brand. We had the dominant enrollment of the state. The other institutions were suffering. This causes a problem in the local economy of the regional institutions that are helping their cities thrive. So you have this pickle of a problem, right? The main brand can flourish. The others are suffering because of the demographic realities and the performance of K-12. I think that institutions have to make it affordable. We do that at Rutgers. We did it at LSU, where if you were under a certain income level, your tuition was basically free. We've got to be better at advertising that. I don't think people know that oftentimes, that they're at a certain income level, that they're probably not going to have to pay much in tuition. That is going to be the key. The disinvestment you described, I'm just going to say this: if Louisiana could actually pay for capital projects to keep the deferred maintenance costs down, Louisiana could do that. It was stark to me to come here in New Jersey to find that that was not the case. So in essence, I now have to charge you for capital projects in that tuition cost, where you didn't have to do that. You know, it was more egalitarian in the sense that it was democratized, the cost of keeping the buildings and infrastructure alive. I think that's a huge problem. And I'm just going to segue. The bang for the buck for college education, any investment in it, I always tell my legislative friends, it's 3-4 to 1 every dollar you give to a higher education institution, you get back in the state. You can't give enough money if you want to drive the economy to higher ed. And I'm going to say it, and I'm not a community college leader, I said it to my colleague, that's a huge deal. We've got to accelerate what's happening there, because those people get to market faster, and we've got to also make sure that we're taking care of the social mobility opportunities in undergrad. And no one ever talks about PhD education, but you should, because those are the people who are going to start the companies. And so those things have to be invested in, and when you have that going, they call that, an economy like Raleigh-Durham. That's thriving. And so I think we just have to get there and figure it out. But you're not tossing money away when you give it to higher education. You're only accelerating your dollar.
Stay tuned. We're getting to budget season. You're going to refresh that message.
Oh, I'll be ready.
Bob, another challenge we're dealing with, open enrollment meant many companies with double-digit increases in health insurance, while at the same time, your institutions are feeling the pressure, both in the facilities and people. Give us some insight, on the current state of healthcare in New Jersey and what you see.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. First let me start on the positive side. I think we should all be very proud of the healthcare system in New Jersey. We have some of the best outcomes anywhere in the nation. Couple examples. There's a group called Leapfrog that ranks hospitals in terms of patient safety. There's a lot of indicators that go behind those rankings. We're number 3 in the entire nation. The Center for Medicare and Medicaid awards hospitals for performance based on stars. We have more 3, 4, and 5-star hospitals throughout the state of New Jersey than just about any other state in the country. U.S. News and World Report, another great example. We have, for the first time in New Jersey history, we have a hospital, Hackensack University Medical Center, that's been ranked in the top 20 in the entire nation on the honor roll list. What goes behind all those rankings are really important. Those are lives being saved. Those are complications being avoided. There are unnecessary readmissions that never happen. There are patients that get discharged directly to home and get great home care. They don't have to stop in intermediate care facilities. Those are all facts that are happening in New Jersey. Now, having said all that, as I mentioned, a few minutes ago, affordability is definitely, an issue out there. And, whether it's pharmaceutical costs going up at double the CPI, whether it's medical surgical supplies in short supply or going up in a significant rate beyond the rate of inflation, labor costs skyrocketing in healthcare because of shortages in the workforce. Those are all factors that are leading to some of the challenges around affordability. And you mentioned it in your question too, from the hospital's perspective, there's been really a good partnership between the state and the federal government for Medicare and Medicaid funding. But unfortunately, the federal government in recent years has cut back on Medicare funding under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. Unfortunately, to pay for some of the benefits in that act, Medicaid reimbursement to the states is going down. Just as an example, Hackensack Meridian Health, we take care of 20% of all Medicaid patients throughout the state of New Jersey. So that's going to impact all of us. I mean, every time a hospital or a physician or a physician's practice sees a Medicare or Medicaid patient in the state of New Jersey, they're losing money on those patients. So what happens is the rates get shifted to the commercial payers, and that's why you see some of those double-digit rates that you spoke about. So just in terms of a couple quick solutions that, I alluded to it in my opening comments, I think we need to deliver care a little bit differently. The most expensive care is really delivered within the 4 walls of the hospital, and we're starting to see more and more care delivered outside those 4 walls. And that's why you're seeing really the explosion, if you will, of ambulatory care, whether it's health and wellness centers, surgery centers, urgent care centers. That's really the future of healthcare. Also, we're going full circle. When I started in my career, there was a lot of home care, home visits by doctors that went on. So I go back to even remembering Marcus Welby and folks like that. But what's happening now is we're actually delivering hospital-level care, acute care services within the home, hospital-at-home programs. That's the future of how we're going to reduce costs in healthcare. The other piece is focusing on prevention. I mentioned that before, but 80% of why a person stays healthy has to do with some of the social factors out there. There have been a lot of studies around that. So not just Hackensack Meridian, but other health systems like us are screening now for those social factors, whether it's transportation issues where people can't get to and from a doctor's office, unstable housing, maybe they're living in a food desert and they can't get nutritious foods. We're screening for all of those as patients come into our system, and then we're referring those patients for follow-up care. There are a lot of agencies out there in local communities and throughout the state that can be helpful there. And then the last point I'm going to make, in terms of focus on prevention, we need to really train the next generation of physicians in particular to focus on prevention as much as they've focused on treatment. So we, at Hackensack Meridian, we opened up what is New Jersey's first new private medical school in 60 years with a real focus on prevention. When you start a new medical school, you have a clean slate. You can really change the curriculum. Schools that have been around for hundreds of years, like Harvard and Yale, they don't have as an easy time to do that. And we have something that we've instituted that's called the Human Dimension Program. And what it does is it requires medical students for their entire term, for 3 or 4 years, to be teamed up with families, particularly in underserved communities, so that they can understand firsthand some of those social factors as to why those individuals and families are not staying healthy. And I think what it's doing is it's actually really graduating a new class of medical students that are going to be much more well-rounded, much more focused on prevention. And we've already graduated 400 students, and we're seeing them practicing within the state of New Jersey with that kind of philosophy. So there are definitely solutions out there, but these are some big challenges. But I think, just going back to my initial point, we as a business community should be very proud of the healthcare that is delivered in New Jersey, not just by the hospitals, but by doctors and nurses and pharmacists, technicians, nutritionists. I mean, it is really first rate.
Love to hear that we're training them, and love even more that they're staying and being part of our community too, to help improve quality outcomes. Liat, explain how the AI Hub is working to drive innovation in New Jersey, and specifically, let's talk about the importance of having the innovation ecosystem marrying higher ed, other areas of industry, business, research. Give us some insight into that.
Sure. So, I mean, we are currently living through the most profound technological shift in human history, right? I mean, that is at the forefront of everyone's mind, every individual, every business. And so our role is really to think about how do you reduce the friction of innovation at this time? In other words, how do you make sure that you ensure that you're moving every idea from concept to impact as fast as possible? And how do you do that across the board, meeting everyone where they are in their AI journey, right? So what we do is we focus on 5 pillars. The first is, how do we advance frontier R&D? So, on that front, we're really excited to share that we've been named one of 2 hubs in the world to have access to Microsoft Discovery. This is Microsoft's agentic R&D platform, and it really accelerates the kind of breakthroughs we want to see for some of the toughest scientific problems of our time. What it does essentially is take very tough problems where there are, let's say, 30 million candidates, and it reduces them to, say, a handful of candidates within 80 hours of compute, right? Then we can move those through our labs and really get to some of those solutions across drug discovery and material science quicker. We're also working very closely with partners across our research institutions and community colleges and the governor's office and others to think about what are the infrastructural settings we need to invest in. So before he left office, Governor Murphy announced a $25 million initial investment in supercomputing infrastructure. The question for us is, how do you bring this kind of compute infrastructure and how do you bring data access to as many people as possible in a democratized fashion and work with partners to make that really accessible and to benefit from it? The second thing we focus on is how are we moving forward commercialization and innovation, right? So on that front, we announced a partnership with Plug and Play, who will be leading our accelerator program, which we just closed applications for our first cohort. There will be 2 cohorts a year. We'll have 30 to 40 companies going through the program every year. And Plug and Play will be able to invest in that, as well as the EDA together with Core. We've announced a $20 million investment fund for follow-on funding for some of those companies. We also think very much about talent, and I won't touch on all of what we're doing on talent, but there's nothing more important than making sure that talent is ready to meet this moment, right? Talent is at risk when it's not ready for the times. But talent is the most important thing to make sure we're capitalizing on the productivity potential here, right? And then the other, and then finally, we really think about how do we create a cohesive AI ecosystem across the board, where we're bringing down silos across institutions that don't normally work together, across sectors that don't normally interact to bring this moment forward. We have a 6,500 square foot hub. We do many events every year. We have a co-working space for our community there as well. And then all of that with the lens of how do you make sure to integrate into all of those pillars responsible, beneficial, secure AI as a foundational design and building element. So that's some of the work we've started to do over the past few months, and really hope to work with you all to continue to do that work across the board and bring this ecosystem together.
Excellent. Steve, we briefly touched on energy. Governor Cheryl has made this her day one focus and top campaign priority. We got work to do here. Where do we go? And more specifically, from your insight, what are you looking for at a BPU, DP, your former colleagues in the legislature? What are going to be the signs that we're moving in the right direction here?
And it's not that difficult to figure out. It's supply and demand. And it's frustrating. Like, I did all the clean energy. I said this. I did every one of the clean energy bills. But I did them for the economic benefit for the state of New Jersey, and because I wanted to produce more power in New Jersey. Bill, AI, the data centers are not going away. In my former career, we were restarting 3 Mile Island, right? It's one reactor for 2 data centers. That's how much energy is being consumed. So recognizing that you need power, stop talking about it, get a plan, and start moving forward on it. I'm going to say something that a lot of Democrats don't like to talk about. Pipelines. We need them. We have an abundance of energy in this country that we're not utilizing, right? Listen, I'm not promoting coal, but I remember when natural gas was seen as clean and people were thrilled. Coming up with policies, and honestly, former governor, I completely disagreed with his energy master plan where we're going to mandate what car you're going to drive. That's bullshit, right? I'm going
it's a legislative term, by the way.
That they're going to tell you that you can't have a gas oven when we don't have enough energy now. So think about it. We're mandating electricity for everything when we're not producing electricity. So, Bill, we need to start now clearing up the red tape that Governor Cheryl has said. We absolutely got to clean up the regulation. Let us move forward quickly. Because I'm telling you, if you wanted to build a power plant tomorrow, it's 5 to 6 years for the turbine. So we're going to get a lot of hurt in between. And nuclear, I see my friend Rick Thigpen. I love nuclear, right? At one point, everyone hated it. It was so partisan in New Jersey, we had a war to keep the plants open. Now everyone loves nuclear, so let's take that energy, let's take that environment where people are in favor of it, and start to position ourselves to build. Now the problem is it takes too long. It takes way too long. That's why you got to start now. Energy independence, we can be energy independent. New Jersey was energy independent. Policies matter. When legislators and governors set policy, because it sounds good or feels good, well, it might sound good, but it doesn't feel good when you're starting to pay those electric bills. So, Bill, it's stop, I don't like this, I don't like that. Battery storage is great. Mm-hmm. Listen, I told somebody earlier, I really screwed up on solar. Because when I passed the solar bill, we should have mandated every time they build a warehouse that's 1 million or 2 million square feet, they should have had to put solar panels on it. But we didn't do that. So, listen, it really is not that complicated. We need more. We can do more. And the really positive thing is the jobs that will be created here. When we take energy from other states, the plant operators are living in those states. We're paying a premium. We got nothing to show for it. So the investment here, and like I said, it's so simple, and we have the tools that are all here but it's thinking outside the box. Like when I tell people about the pension system, absolutely utilize that money to fix your problems and create jobs. So it's just gotta be a mindset that it's all the above. We need all the energy you can possibly get in the state. And we have to change that attitude, because I don't know many people that want to get rid of their stoves. You know what I mean? Oh, by the way, that's gas. So, we just got to change the attitude of people and get pipelines in the ground, because we're way behind. And I'm telling you, watch your electric bills for the next 5 to 6 years. You can blame the energy companies. You can blame the PJM. We, New Jersey, are to blame because of the energy policy we have. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Let's talk about some positives. One of the places where New Jersey consistently ranks at or near the top is our workforce. Our workforce development, our workforce abilities, our education and quality. But, dynamic pace of change coming. You've got AI and other things. Keeping skills on par with what your industry needs are is always a challenge. So I want to ask you each, what are you seeing by way of availability, workforce readiness? Bruce, why don't we start with you?
Sure. So I think availability of talent is pretty high. To me, the challenge is how do you keep investing in that talent when the skills needed to succeed in the future are different than the skills you have today. So part of this is the selection process. You want to make sure you're focusing on people who are adaptable, they have good judgment, they have a growth mindset, they are intellectually curious, they embrace learning, and those kind of people will thrive in an environment and continue to be able to morph into what the future demands are on their skill set. We've invested in a program called Talent Matters, which 2/3 of our 18,000 people have been actively invested in this, but it allows you to profile your skill set and then look at different career pathways, what the jobs are today inside the company and where kind of the puck is going, and then you can take advantage of different job rotations and also educational opportunities. We have badging programs, et cetera, inside the company. So a key to this is attracting good people, but then making sure you're investing in those people so they can continue to upskill themselves. So that's kind of top of mind for us, and I think for a lot of companies that we deal with, they're in the same mindset. And then there's broader workforce development programs for people who aren't necessarily where they want to be in their career, and there's public-private partnerships around that, but I'll kind of stick to what we're doing at Citizens.
Let's keep going down the line. Steve?
Bill, we gotta train people in the jobs that are going to be there. That's one of the big problems. My son, one of his best friends, went to college for gaming design. Okay. Well, there's no jobs for gaming design here. If you go to the West Coast, there's plenty of them. So focusing on, look, New Jersey, again, is a really special state. We got the brightest workforce in the country. We got some of the best universities. But we have to train people for the jobs that are coming, not the jobs that aren't here. And too often we do that. I just retired from the Ironworkers Union, 50 years. You know how many people can stay in careers? Like some of the labor stats I saw is people change careers 8 to 12 times over a lifetime. It's not bad being an ironworker. I wish I was an electrician. Those guys actually make real money, and they got a skill. But training people for the jobs that are there and taking advantage of what we have here, we should leverage our universities. We should leverage them. That's economic development. I can't agree more with the president. Universities drive the economy. Down where I live, Rowan University, when we started growing it, it went from $160 million or $90 million payroll to, I think they said 800 million now, from 1,400 jobs to 4,000 jobs. The right investment, and see, that's the problem with the budget. We come up with shiny new objects, and then we don't fund the deferred maintenance. We don't we don't put the money where we need to do. So, listen, Bill, we need to make the investments for the jobs that are here. And, we did one thing that was called stackable credits. The stackable credits was, this was the home run. We had labor, management, everyone agreeing it was a good idea. And guess what? It was.
Good. Liat?
So, like I said before, I think workforce is the most important question, period, right? For a couple of reasons. One is, if workforce lags innovation, we are going to see an economic bubble, right? When we were laying down, fiber optic cables, a lot of those companies went bust because we didn't know how to capitalize on the infrastructure that was being laid down. That is some of what we're seeing today, right? And so the more we can upskill our workforce to keep pace with the power of the innovation we're seeing, the more we're going to be able to really make sure that we're, not getting into an economic bubble, having some economic stability and productivity growth here. The other thing we need to be careful of is there's always in these technological revolutions, there are winners and losers, and it comes down to uneven adoption. And so the more we can make sure that we are thinking very carefully about leveling everybody up so that we don't create even greater inequality. I mean, this is the root of why it's so important, right? There are three big problems that we're seeing on our end when we talk to institutions across the state. The first is industry has not yet fully defined what are the skills and use cases you most need to keep up with the AI era. So when there's no real, common language or consensus around that, that's really hard to translate to educational institutions, workforce development institutions to say, well, we want to train people for the future of the skills, but what are they? We don't know yet. And so having some sort of iterative cycle that's more effective is key. We're doing an employer survey. If you have that survey, if you've gotten that, please respond to that. We're trying to really get a grasp on what different industry sectors need, but we need a more iterative method to do that. The second problem here is, every educational institution in the state is grappling with how to deal in this era and in terms of making sure that they are meeting the promise here. And there are 5 pain points we hear across the board. One is, how can I make sure my faculty knows how to use this technology and how to teach it? The second is, how do I integrate it into my operations? How do I create curricula on the technical side and the AI for all side? How do I think about the promise of AI in education in terms of personalization and accessibility and changing what education actually looks like? And so these are some of the items that come up, right? So what we've done is we've started the first AI Faculty Future Studio. It's bringing together a dozen of the state four-year institutions, half of which are research universities, half of which are teaching universities, to talk about co-creating curricula, coming together to think about what does AI use governance look like for our educational institutions. And I see a lot of the leaders of educational institutions. I mean, your faculty have been incredible assets in that conversation, and hopefully we can create some real added value here by thinking together. And the third thing, and that's the thing that keeps me up at night, is how are we going to reskill and upskill every single person in the state, because that is what's required. And it's a real problem because we know that reskilling programs do not work. We don't see reskilling programs that work at scale. So what does that mean? I mean, it essentially means we have to completely rethink the way that we approach talent. Right now, we approach talent as an anti-poverty measure or a very early stage investment. There has to be a complete rehaul of how we think about lifelong learning and approach talent as an R&D investment, right? Being willing to fail, having tax credits for lifelong learning. How do we get everyone in the room to be able to have the means to train your own workforce, right? And on that end, I mean, some of the things we're doing is really thinking about, underserved communities and making sure they don't, fall behind in this moment. We just worked with the, Office of the Secretary of Higher Education, Department of Labor, our colleagues at New Jersey Council of Community Colleges to launch the first AI machine learning apprenticeship in the state, right? To place talent across the board in industry and work with industry to level up their AI capabilities. These are the type of things we want to do, because if you think about in the Industrial Revolution, if you were a skilled weaver, you were upper middle class. Incomes, you have a weaving machine and you're displaced. But anyone who could then use weaving machines really had a huge amount of economic mobility. So one question is, how do you leapfrog people in this era, right? And the same is, we think a lot about small businesses and nonprofits and other organizations who don't have a huge amount of capital to invest in this moment. And a lot of what we're thinking about is how do we deploy talent to come to small and medium businesses to work with you to be able to, have the resources to be able to, change your operations and think about how you meet this moment.
Super, thank you. Bob.
Yeah, so, Bill, when I think about this, coming out of COVID, during and after COVID, the healthcare industry really experienced significant shortages. Just to throw out a couple numbers out there, 1 out of 5 nurses actually left the profession during and after COVID, which, was so significant. 1 out of 3 New Jerseyans don't have access to a primary care physician because we have a shortage of primary care physicians. So, I think there's a couple of solutions out there. I want to say, though, since COVID, things have stabilized to some extent, so we are seeing stabilization. There's less turnover amongst the nursing team. We're seeing, less vacancies across the board for technicians, nurses, physicians, but it's still a significant issue. So I think, there are a couple things. Number one, I think it's important, for healthcare to really team up with higher education to be sure that there's a good supply of talent that stays within our state. We're proud of our affiliations, including the one with Rutgers, where they've been able to really help us, particularly in the areas of technicians, pharmacists, and the like. I think that's really important. Also, I think, healthcare organizations are also doing their own training. I mentioned our new medical school. Half of the graduates from our medical school are doing their residencies at New Jersey hospitals and staying in New Jersey to practice medicine. We're incentivizing them to do that. We're incentivizing them to go into primary care and other specialties that are in short supply. That's really very, very important. We also have our own nursing schools, but we also affiliate with nursing schools that are not part of our health organization. And I think higher education in New Jersey really plays a big role in keeping talent in the state. Just on the technology side, I do want to say that I think there are some exciting technologies that will help keep the workforce in place in healthcare. One of the biggest issues we've seen is burnout. Why have 1 out of 5 nurses left the profession? It has to do with burnout. So let me give you a concrete example of what's worked. We instituted a virtual nursing program at Hackensack Meridian Health. So if you think about it, so much of the time that bedside nurses are burdened with today are on administrative tasks, on the long process to admit a patient, the long process to discharge a patient. A virtual nurse can help do those tasks. That frees up the bedside nurse to spend more time at the bedside. And guess what? That's why they went to nursing school. They want to spend more time with the patients. They're more satisfied that way, and they stay within the healthcare system much more effectively. On the physician side, we're using an AI algorithm to help physicians summarize their charting, and that's reducing that time that they're spending by 2 to 3 hours a day and reducing their burnout as well. So technology will play a big role, but I do want to point out when it comes to AI, my philosophy is AI will supplement our workforce. It won't take the place of our workforce. I want to assure everybody in this room that, human beings are still making the ultimate healthcare decisions. They are being aided by exciting new technology like AI that can help them make the right decisions quicker. But at the end of the day, it's a human being that still has to be at the helm in healthcare.
Excellent. Dr. Tate.
It's the only reason I came to this panel. Number one, and it's a presupposition, if you have a high-cost state, the only way you're going to be able to compete in the market is the quality of the people has to be far better than the people you're competing with. So this is the number one challenge. The quality of the people has to be better because the cost parameters here are exorbitant. I just left Louisiana, I know. It's shockingly different. Number one, you have to keep the best people in New Jersey. The reason the graduates leave, housing costs, weak early career job density, better ecosystem signals in New York, Boston, and Philly. How do you fix that? student loan credits for in-state employment, housing incentives and tied to New Jersey-based employers like yourself, wage subsidies for first 2 and 3 years of employment for the very best people in key sectors. This is cheaper than finding mid-career people. It's cheaper. Make universities engines of commercialization. New Jersey underperforms places like Massachusetts badly in terms of turning research into startups. That's a huge problem. The structural issues are tech transfer offices are under-resourced and risk-averse. Faculty incentives favor publications over companies, and the lack of early-stage capital tied to universities is stark. Fixes state-backed proof of concept funding, faster IP licensing. You talked about deregulation with standard terms, equity sharing models that don't punish the founders. We could boom here. It's all in place. We have to align degrees with labor market reality. I want to say something. If I hear you say English majors aren't valuable or history majors aren't valuable, I just walk away from you. They are. It's not about eliminating these degree programs. It's about what you talked about, sir. It's about stackable value. So how do we make high-impact adjustments? We embed data, AI projects into non-STEM majors. We expand co-op programs. My colleagues from NJIT are experts at that. We have to replicate that more broadly. We have to fund short-term employer-validated credential add-ons. We can't have employers saying they don't know what they want. You have to know what you want. We'll adapt in the universities, and we'll get it aligned. The alignment is important. Community colleges are our secret weapon. They get to market faster and better. I'm at a four-year school, PhD education, and community colleges are the secret weapon. And I'm going to say this. We did a poll of businesses here. I did that in Louisiana, and we did it here at Rutgers. Every business that was close to a Rutgers campus, it was 95% approved of Rutgers. We need regional compacts with local businesses aligning everything I just talked about, region by region. You know, in Louisiana, we said it was parish by parish, it's county by county. If we do that, we will absolutely cook and win. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Tate. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the other great things about your business community that you guys are fighting in every day to keep your business running is you have fantastic organizations that are on the front lines like NJBIA fighting for you. One of the great tools that NJBIA deploys to help gauge our competitiveness and what's going on in our state is tracking our regional competitiveness against our peers. So NJBIA on an annual basis will track our rankings compared to Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, Massachusetts, New York, Pennsylvania on 6 competitive metrics: minimum wage, top income tax rate, top corporate tax rate, sales tax, property tax, and maximum UI contribution per employee. Bad news. Since its inception in tracking this, New Jersey has ranked dead last overall in our region, and not just by a little, by a lot. We've lagged behind the state of Connecticut and New York regularly. So, for our last question for this esteemed panel, what do we do here? How are we going to address competitiveness in New Jersey? What's your best advice? Bruce, I'm going to start with you.
I think we spoke a lot about the things that we need to focus on. We talked about playing to our strengths in education and workforce development. We talked about tackling some of the challenges like energy costs and deregulation. So I think, accentuate the positives, work on the negatives. And I would say the other thing that can make a big difference is just the business community, the people here in this room, really staying engaged, working with NJBIA to access that open door that Mikey Sherrill just said is there. And so a lot of times, just having that dialogue and making sure that the government understands what businesses think are their key issues and having that positive receptivity, let's go after that. I think that can make a real big difference.
Steve.
Bill, it's pretty simple here. we spend too much, and that's what made us unaffordable, and we don't invest right, which is higher education. I'm a huge believer in higher education because it drives your economy. So, legislatures, I was just talking to somebody the other day and said, well, the legislature's only in there for a month. That might not be a bad idea. Because the legislature, when they're there, they feel they got to legislate. And you'll put regulation on top of regulation on top of regulation. And listen, when Governor Christie was in office, we did a red tape thing. And these were all pieces of legislation that we did, and we passed and the governor signed, and we were doing away with them because it was only hurting us. So affordability starts with one, stop looking for revenues to match what you're spending. And number two, focus on what's important that's going to grow your economy, not just what you hope for, what you want because it's a shiny object.
Liat.
I would say 4 things. One is, again, treat talent as an R&D strategy and really think about the funding structures that don't incentivize that kind of viewpoint. The second is invest in the infrastructure of the future. That means digital and AI infrastructure alongside housing and transportation and neighborhoods that are accessible to people. The third is ecosystem building, so making sure there are network effects so we can compete with Boston and New York and California on the talent piece. And finally, forward-looking regulation that balances 4 really difficult questions of, making sure that we can adopt AI responsibly with the kind of right privacy measures and with a business-forward environment.
Let's go, Bob.
So I agree with my colleagues. I think regulations that are antiquated and are cumbersome really hold New Jersey back in a lot of ways. Just a couple quick examples in the healthcare space. I mean, there is no reason why patients have to leave New Jersey to get any sort of organ transplant, but we don't have enough organ transplant centers in New Jersey. They haven't kept up with the population growth and the density of population in New Jersey. Children, little babies, have to leave our state to get pediatric cardiac surgery that are only a few days old. Think of the burden that puts on their families. That's because of antiquated regulations, some of which go back to the 1970s, believe it or not. So, I think we need, I totally agree. I think we need to really revamp. We need to look at the regulations in place. And I'm not one of those people that say that we should be totally unregulated. I think there are, regulations do have their place, and we need that kind of governance. But I think they're just too burdensome here. And the other thought I had is let's promote what we have. I mean, we have a lot of great things out here. I think we need to, in terms of us being more competitive out there, we need to tout the healthcare system. We need to tout our higher education system in New Jersey. We need to tout the housing that we provide, the diversity of housing, the diversity of our state, the transportation systems, the access to great culture in New Jersey. I think there's a lot New Jersey offers to be more competitive. So I'd say 2 things. Let's get rid of some of these antiquated regulations. Let's try to let the business community do what they do best, and let's promote the good that we have in New Jersey because we got a lot of it.
Dr. Tate, bring us home.
I'm just going to go back to something I said, and I'm going to stay in the higher ed space. We have to come up with a place-based strategy. Newark, and I'll say this, I think Newark is a city that has a Big Ten business school, a Big Ten medical school, a Big Ten law school, and it's never been leaned into. It's stunning. When I got here, I was shook. I said, I can't believe this. In that city, you have those artifacts, and you have other institutions of higher ed that are outstanding. But we haven't leaned into a place-based strategy where we're all sitting down talking about, okay, this is what we're going to do in Newark. And this is how we're going to work this out, and this is the university's role in it. I could just say the same thing in New Brunswick, in Middlesex County. Life sciences data, we should be number 1. We have the talent that they have in Boston. We have the talent that they have in Virginia, and there's nothing keeping us there except for leadership in doing it. That's the only difference. You can do the same thing in Camden. There's so many things that can happen: advanced manufacturing, defense, Just sit down and do it. Because we treat ourselves like a federation here. That's what I've told my friends at Rutgers. I feel like I'm in a federation, not a family. There's a difference. If this is your family, we're going to operate in a different fashion. My job is to make the resources of a public entity available to everyone. Simply stated. So I will work with any group, any time that says they want to do a place-based strategy to make this economy in this region work. And we should be digging into that. And I'm going to say this finally. This is my last piece. State by state, I do policy research. I've gone to every state in the country, every municipality. They all say they want to be something. We want to be the biotech hub. We want to be the neuroscience hub. We want to be this. We want to be that. There are all these things. And then you ask them a simple question. How are you aligned with the resources that you've been blessed with in this entity? And what you find out is generally self-interested, short-term thinking, and very little what I call family thinking. I know business people don't like that. I'm talking about a sufficient amount of trust to begin to invest and work together and know we're going to seamlessly make this community better. And I mean fight for it. That's what's required. Because the high costs here are going to require us to fight like a family with a lot of debt. Okay? And that's the reality of this situation. You know? And I would give you some gumbo on a cold day like this, but...
I like that. I like that.
I'm
I'm coming up to see you. We'll get together. Ladies and gentlemen, you have been amazing with your time. Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for this amazing group. And also, a round of applause for our hosts. This organization is doing amazing things, fighting for you every day. Our host, Michele and BAA.
Thanks so much, Bill. I just asked our leaders to stay seated, and Bill, please stay here too, because we want to take a picture also. But I just want to say, if I could have been, and thank God we're taping all of this, if I could have been writing down and I took every idea that came off this table from your vantage point and where you sit, we got the playbook for the state of New Jersey. I mean, hands down, that was the playbook for the state of New Jersey. We're on it. We're on it. I'm going to... interns, I want my interns, Jack. Get the interns ready. I know they're here. Okay, here's your next project coming up. We're going to dissect that. We're going to put it together. I want to thank you all. This is the extraordinary thought leadership we have here in the great state of New Jersey. Give them one more round of applause. And if you will just stay seated for 1 second, I'm going to do a quick wrap because we'd like to take a picture, and I want to get you all going on your way. This has been an extraordinary morning. We're on a reset. Good optimism, good momentum, good opportunity. We need to seize it. We need every one of you. Please go on our website, look at our upcoming events. We've got extraordinary things going on here over the next few months to keep this energy going. Thanks for being here. Huge shout out to the BIA staff who put this event together today. Another shout out for all those great partners. You all, please stay safe and stay warm, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.